Well, hey there. I'm Pastor Cody.
And I'm Pastor Matt.
And we're here on this faithful Thursday
Yeah.
to have a conversation.
Thanksgiving
and
Day.
It's Thanksgiving. So this is our turkey edition conversation.
Turkey Bowl edition.
Yep.
All of you are sitting at home, staring at your phones. None of you are talking to family members.
Yep. So while you're doing that, you might as well watch us talk because, we're taking time out of our Thanksgiving to broadcast to you.
That's right, we are. You know it.
Wink, wink. It's for sure not Monday.
Yeah. No. Enjoy this Thanksgiving Day edition of the conversation.
Yes. While we're getting interdimensional introduced.
Interdimensional.
Yep. Alex Jones just popped in interdimensional vampires.
I'm finding the connection between bullies, quitters, seaweed people.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. And we will find you. Yeah, you and your Bigfoot companion.
Oh, God.
So what's your favorite Thanksgiving food?
Deviled eggs.
Really?
Easy.
Yeah. Can you taste those still?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My taste is like a revised COVID taste.
Yeah.
I have like kind of the same, but not
you
really.
You have New King James taste.
Already,
it's
but
not
the
yet.
Same. No. No, but like the Maryland twist on deviled eggs. Deviled eggs have always been, I would say, my favorite.
The Old Bay on the deviled eggs, though?
Well, they put lump crab meat.
Ooh,
and you got to get them from
that.
You got to get them from Michael's. You go to Michael's Cafe. Yeah, finer things, right? The
Finer Things Club.
The deviled eggs with lump crab meat and Old Bay on top. Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to take some.
They send it?
Oh, they send it. Yeah.
I feel like I should go get some for lunch today.
Oh my gosh, they're amazing. Their appetizers there are so good.
Yeah.
Michael's Cafe.
What do? They give you like 3 of those for like $10?
No. It's like 6 for $50. No. Yeah.
But it's worth it.
It is. It's so worth it. I love Michael's.
What they do is they put a whole crab cake in between 2 halves of an egg.
It's spectacular.
And they offer it on a 30-year fixed. And it's great.
That's funny. Yeah, but it's really good. That's my favorite food. What's yours? What's your favorite Thanksgiving Day food?
I'm really like so Thanksgiving for me is like my least favorite holiday.
Oh, come on, man.
But
are you serious?
Yeah, I really just don't like all of the foods that historically make Thanksgiving what it is, at least from what I've experienced. I just generally don't care for.
Really?
Like some people do sauerkraut. I hate that. I don't like egg salad.
Traditional. That's not traditional.
Well, I'm just throwing
either.
food out there. And then
I'm just saying none of that is a traditional Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah. What would you say is a traditional Thanksgiving food?
Turkey.
Okay. I like turkey.
Mashed potatoes.
Yes, but no gravy though.
Oh, what's wrong with gravy?
I don't like it. It's weird.
Well, maybe that's your problem because the gravy on the turkey is really good.
Really?
Yeah, and I think like most of these Thanksgiving Day meal food. Ah, my gosh, Thanksgiving Day foods go well with gravy? Like maybe that's why you're not a big fan.
I just have always been like, once I figured out, so I'm a big texture person, and it's always just been like weird, especially like after it sits for a while and it gets like the film on top, and I'm like, no, that's gross. And then I figured out what it was, and I was like, no, that's like double no, like not for me. Not that I don't eat extremely unhealthy things.
I was about to say
it's just not for me.
Well, I think so.
I'm not going to pretend to be a health nut on air because I'm not.
Well,
you can't tell.
You have your mashed potatoes, your corn. Green beans, just a traditional side. Yeah. Some people have ham.
As long as they're not straight from a can, though, it's terrible.
That's fine. Yeah, if they have bacon, if you cook green beans with bacon, they can be from a can. It doesn't matter.
That's true. The bacon helps. Anything with bacon helps.
Stuffing from the turkey. You don't like stuffing? Oh, man.
Sometimes it just it being inside the turkey, it's just kind of a weird. I don't know.
We'll just get stovetop.
Yeah.
Well, and then one that my mom always does, a couple of things, of course, cranberry sauce. Have you heard of
it? It ain't real unless it's still got the serial number imprinted in it from the can.
What about rutabaga? You ever had that?
What the heck is that?
You don't know what rutabaga is?
I have no idea what.
If you know what rutabaga is,
somebody tell me what a rutabaga is.
Drop it in the comments
know.
if you've ever had it. And that may be a southern thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But We always have rutabaga
It sounds like
every year.
like a stereotypical old person term, like rutabaga.
No, it's a root, like some sort of turnip root.
Oh, so
things.
it's not like RUD, it's like ROOT.
No, I don't think so. I don't know how to spell it, but it's.
I don't know how to spell it. It just is that.
Yeah, I don't know how to spell it, but we just call it rutabaga. I think that's what it's called. Some say beggy. I don't. Yeah, but it's like a yellowish orange color. And it has a mashed potato kind of texture, I guess, ish. You know what it's like? It's like the cauliflower mashed potatoes.
You lost me at cauliflower. You totally whatever selling you were trying to do, it just fell.
Yeah. Then we also do the celery with the filling. You ever have that?
Like peanut butter?
No.
I don't like celery.
It's like a cream cheese filling in the celery. No? Mm-hmm. Oh man. Yeah,
I pretty much just do like corn, mashed
Thanksgiving
potatoes,
no
green beans, turkey, and ham. That's
okay.
what I eat.
Okay.
But to me, it's like if I'm gonna like celebrate and go all out for food, like those are like not impressive things to eat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you're really gonna get together, and
turkeys are like $60.
Right? They are coveted items.
Yeah, those doggone things can't even get your hands on them.
Yeah, but I've always just kind of felt like it's just like very like average, and then it's so thick too. It's not like you can just sit there and eat. Like, for example, like when you sit there and eat crabs, like you can just hang out and eat crabs for hours. And then at Thanksgiving, you make like all this food, but nobody eats like anything because like after one plate, it's like potatoes and super dry turkey. And it sits. And then it's like, and then rolls. And it's like, well, we're done. Now we got food for 4 days.
I mean, I think too, that's key. If you cook the turkey and it's dry, nobody's going to like it.
Yeah, I do. My uncle fried a turkey one time, and that was really good.
Oh, it's delicious.
That's worth that. Look, and I know Greg, if you're watching, which you probably aren't, I know Greg fries turkeys. And
does he?
If you fry turkeys, your Thanksgiving is acceptable to the Lord. If it's not, if you don't, then it's not. You're basically a pagan. So
that's funny.
Yeah.
Meat offered to idols.
Yep, that's what it is. Your oven is an idol.
I don't mind it when it's cooked in a bag.
Yeah, like I'm just saying, you anoint your turkey with frying oil, and it's a biblical thing.
It's gotten weird, but we're so thankful that you've joined us.
Yeah.
Today.
Anyway.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about the message.
We're gonna have ourselves a convo about his message, fame and fortune. We're gonna be talking about prosperity, how you can better yourself financially in 10 ways according to Scripture. Just kidding, because we don't do that crap here.
Yeah, true. That's what
but
it is.
Well, let's jump in. All right, so let's jump in here. Your message, fame and fortune. So this is the final installment of his series. And are you doing 2 Corinthians like again more, or is this it? So you've just kind of picked that theme throughout the book, and that's the one.
We just tried this. It was a little different for us. So we got some pretty good feedback. I think folks in general enjoyed that. I think typically preaching through 2 Corinthians, I would have taken a lot longer.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you'd be 2 chapters deep right now.
Right. So it's kind of a different way of, just a different approach, saying, hey, I more or less spent a lot of time on the front end of this study, reading through the book over and over. What?
Well, it was really good. When I was waiting for your sermon notes to upload over the weekend, I'm just thinking about that. I forgot to upload those for Drew. I'll have to do that.
Oh, there you go.
But I was waiting for him, and I was like, I swear if he names another message circling the wagons, like I'm gonna die. every finale ever is circle the wagons. Circle the wagons.
Yeah.
I think that was your message finale name on 1 Corinthians.
Yeah, no,
and Nehemiah and something else.
And every other book I finished.
Yeah. You might as well make it a thing at this point.
It is a thing.
Yeah. But it was neat. It's a 6-part series. You can view those at our website or on our YouTube channel. It's all parsed out in like a playlist format.
I think it's tangible.
I think so too.
It's something to shoot for, reconciliation, and you can get lost in it. As far as like, where does it fit here? Where does it fit here with this week and that week? But part of that is the narrative.
Right.
It's the way he addressed the church, and we have to consider the fact that this is the 4th letter. So there's context. There's other
a lot
things.
of context.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. And I think too, like from a meditation perspective, like if this is a topic that you're thinking about and you're thinking about it from week 1 and you come back and you're like, okay, where are we at with this, and it just kind of continues. And I think that's a really valuable concept, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's good.
Cut you off.
No, it's good. Yup. So anyway, no. But if you haven't listened to this past week's message, it is in the description, as well as the message notes are in the description as well for your viewing pleasure. So anyway, so to walk us through this idea of fame and fortune, you hit a lot on just, I guess, equality, what that looks like from a gospel lens. Maybe unpack that a little bit for us here.
Well, I think, starting in chapter 8, then chapter 9, then chapter 13, and there were false prophet pieces, super apostles like in between. We addressed that last week. But he's building, this whole thing is getting them in the game for this offering.
In the game.
Yeah, man. So, he's really, and it's kind of an interesting thing. You could really, if I didn't like Paul, I would shred him with this book. And I think part of it is like the idea, and you New Testament scholars out there, you tell me if I'm wrong, but
if you're a New Testament scholar watching, I would love for you to message me,
please,
so I can pick your brain and get smarter.
But I think for me, it's more, we know that there's more details in 2 Corinthians about Paul personally than any other book, and that he wrote for that matter. So it's, the idea of him, kind of bringing in comparison about with this church of Macedonia, bringing in his own testimony and parts of his own testimony with suffering versus him not taking a salary. There's a lot that he
goes to
out
bat for himself quite a bit.
Yeah. And so I think that there's ample opportunity to kind of like fry him a little bit on some of those things. But instead of doing that, we're taking the approach that, look, this is under Holy Ghost inspiration, and that there's something there for us. And, we're trying to see and glean from this narrative and from this story and from his perspective something that will change us and will edify us in our sanctification. And so that's the approach that I took. And this thing of reconciliation, how does what Paul is teaching and preaching through this letter, how does it bring us closer in that process of reconciliation? How does it bring us closer to God, not further from God? How does it bring us closer into our purpose and not further away? But anyway, this title, Fame and Fortune, I picked that because I kind of took the passages of this book that were about this offering, and that were really the driving force behind the tail end in chapter 13, where he says, look, let's see what you can do. Let's see how you're going to really be a part, and I don't want you to let yourself down, with what the Lord's called you to do in this area. So I think that there's a lot to consider, a lot of things. There's a ton of financial implications, and then instead of leaving it just on financial implications, which I think would have been easy to do, Paul is driving home this narrative of equality robed in generosity.
Yeah.
And so he uses that word, and it's, I highlighted it in my notes and in the sermon of just how many times he said generosity. And it's quite a few, and it's all in looking through the lens of equality and what that looks like. And the reason is because this piece of generosity he's trying to get them to be a part of is for the people group of those that are in Jerusalem, those Jews that are struggling. So, he's asking a diverse congregation of all different types of people to give to this specific people group, these suffering Jews in Jerusalem. And that's what this special collection that he keeps referring to, this ministry to the saints, is another way that he frames it.
Yeah.
That's what he's trying to get them to be involved with. So all of those things fitting together, it really just paints an interesting picture for us to be challenged, really.
Right.
I was just very challenged by all of it. And that was my goal. My goal was kind of to convey this school of thought of what it looks like to be gospel centered. You know what I mean? And how we live that out.
Yeah, and I think what's obvious, and when I was listening to it, it even hit me. I was like, oh, I didn't give this week. I should probably do that right now. And I did. But, you know, there is not a, when you think about being gospel centered, like we cannot be gospel centered and have our money on the outside of that. Like money is an integral part. What we do with our money, rather, is an integral part of what it means to live a gospel-centered life.
Yeah.
You can't separate those two things, and I think we like to, because it's like, I worked for this. This is for me, you know. And you made a comment a couple weeks ago, like some of you guys are new, and you know you feel like it's you know, like you threw $20 in the plate, and you're like, yeah, you know, I'm doing it, and you are, right? Like you are giving.
Yeah.
But you know, roping our finances into how we view the world and what we can do to deploy, you know, the gospel into the world is a big deal.
And I think that it is such a good measuring tool, right? I have to be careful of how heavy I lean into it, from the pulpit even. And that's where, you know, I kind of bring this line in between those that are preaching the prosperity gospel. What they're doing is they're saying, if you give to my ministry, you will get back what you want. And that is whatever you desire. And the problem with that is that giving is a means to the end of something that is temporal, of something that is what you think will make you happy, what you think is your purpose in life, of what you think you want to have. And that is absolutely the opposite of what that grace giving looks like in the New Testament. And if anything, it is you give, right, to be able to steward for an eternal purpose. You know, you give not even for an immediate return.
Right.
We know that the Lord's going to give it. Why? Because he's going to give it to you to continue to equip you to do what you've already proven that you will do.
Right. And I think that there's this, you know, people who will read, you know, Malachi chapter 3 as an example of just something that's poorly taken out of context in most circles, I would say. Yeah. The concept of tithing and what exactly that means. And basically it ends up being described as like you give your money and then the mob boss is happy and you are protected and you will likewise receive rewards for that. And so some people, I think, give just because they are like, well, I don't want anything bad to happen, so I'm going to keep giving. They're scared. But New Testament giving is not giving to get something given back to you. It's giving because you believe in what your money is going towards. You believe that the kingdom of God is the ultimate kingdom that we serve, and that our resources, as much as we can, should be deployed to that.
Right. And this is kind of that fine line of where we are in 2021 versus where they are. We're continuing to give to that kingdom. And I think sometimes where it gets blurry for people is sometimes that is giving to someone physically.
Yeah, for sure.
But more often than not, and this is kind of what I was conveying through the sermon, more often than not, or what I was trying to convey, is that is giving to someone's spiritual well-being in 2021. You know, there are ministries that we have that are missions focused. You know, my wife and I participate in other extracurricular giving outside of church that is for people's specific needs. And you know, there are folks that we help. You know, I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back. It's just the reality of what happens when you live your life in a gospel-centered way. You know, the Lord will reveal to you people that need what you have. People that could use what you have. Why? Because he's the one who's given it to us. And so, you know, there are certain circumstances where you give to someone, but on the larger, grander scale, we should be focused on propagating the gospel, on bringing God's kingdom about into this world right now. And how does God do that? The church.
Right.
The church, the local church is God's plan for saving the world, for preparing the bride.
Yeah.
And so that's where, you know, folks they get sideways when it comes to their money because of the way it's spent or the way that it's done. And, you know, and I would agree that it can get sideways and it can get messy, but the overall focus of my message here at this point is your involvement. Where are you at in this scope of reasoning with your own finances and with your own giving, because we can talk about, fiscal responsibility within the church and what we do here to make sure that it goes to the right places and is used for the gospel. But ultimately, before we get to that part of the conversation, it is how much are
the
you
conversation?
how much are you participating? And that's what Paul is saying. Look, you should be participating not because you saw what that other church did down the road. I mean, Macedonia did this out of extreme poverty. Think about what you could do. And that's kind of where I'm burdened for our church. I know some of the things we're going to announce. I know what's coming down the line. I know what the Lord is calling us to do in our leadership, and it's more. It's more.
Yeah.
It's always going to be more at Bethlehem Church. The Lord is calling us to greater things, to reaching more people, to building a larger facility here. It's no mystery, right? We've been talking about it for months, over several years at this point. And so what that takes is a group of people that are committed, not just saying, yeah, that's my church, but there's a track record that shows that your heart is here through your fiscal responsibility.
Yeah.
And so Paul doesn't separate those things, he combines them. He says, look, these are interwoven, they are interconnected. And so rather than having this mindset of how much you giving, are you giving 10%? Are you tithing? And I don't beat people up for saying that. Even Sunday, I kind of poked a little bit at it during the message. But New Testament giving is always more than 10%. Always. Whenever you look at what these folks are doing, it's because they strongly believe in the message of the gospel. They strongly believe in what the Lord is doing, and so they look at what they have not as something for them to consume, but as something God gave them to steward for God's coming kingdom.
Yeah, and that flushes out in a lot of ways. And I think maybe the hang up for some, and I've heard some people say, I think that giving and this concept of generosity, they're like, oh, well, I'm generous, I give to this animal shelter and this and that, or this organization, and those are all like really good things. And a lot of people talk about, how neglected, especially from like the Edenic narrative and what the ultimate purpose of mankind is, like earth care. Like people give to these things and they give their time to clean up and whatever. And all of those things are important, but I think that what overshadows all of it is like, hey, we are called, yes, to be good stewards of our planet, and yes, to take care of God's good world, but we are called primarily to preach the gospel. And if all of those other things are overshadowing or taking away from what we can do for the kingdom of God, then that's a mistake. Yeah. Carmen, I know Carmen's listening to this or watching. We used to ride down the road, and he would like throw something out the window, and he'd be like, "I ain't littering." He's like, "This world's gonna burn up one day, and I'm just adding kindling to it." I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Jeez. But that's and yeah, that kind of sums up kind of how I.
Well, I think part of it is if we truly care about this world, we will redeem the souls of this world,
right?
Because
that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, we know what sin, entropy, and the chaos that is ensuing is because of a sin nature.
For sure.
That's evident. That's corrupting this planet.
Right. Greed and and all of these other things that contribute to.
Yeah, it's not coal. It's sin.
Oof.
And if we can figure that out, right, then the gospel, and this is kind of where the racial piece came in on Sunday, and it's hard, it's unavoidable, right, because he's saying equality is the point. And if you are looking at them as a son and daughter, right, not they're your son, but your brothers and sisters in Christ, you're all sons and daughters of the Most High King, that ends racism.
Yeah,
it ends.
It ends it.
Right, and it brings us all into this umbrella that if they need something and I have something, I have it so that they can have it. Think about the exchange there, right? If what you have is meant for someone else, when we hoard it, right? When we say no, this is mine and not ours, right? We not only miss a blessing, but we sin.
Yeah.
It's preferring ourselves over someone else. And I know, many are thinking to themselves, and I get it because it's hard to reconcile this. I feel like if we all were to do this at once, if we all were to say, okay, let's all have this mindset together right now, and we all were to dive in together, it would be okay.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be as scared, you know, but this is part of the complexity of the amount of churches that we have, the differences of opinion, the splintering that has taken place over the last 2,000 years, where we think, well, we kind of are on our own. We kind of have to take care of what we have. You know, there isn't as much interconnectedness as one would have thought, as there was for sure during this day.
Yeah.
Right. So I think all of that plays into us saying, I need to I need to preserve what I have. I need to protect my family and my own. And when we lean into God's promises, the Lord says, I'm your protector. I will take care of you.
Yeah.
And so I think that I'm not saying it has to happen overnight or that it's going to be this complete transformation, but part of reconciliation that we need to see is that we are allowing the Lord to use what he has given us for his kingdom. And in order for that to take place, you have to be willing. And that was point number one.
Yeah.
You know?
And in Paul's mind, God is reconciling the world to himself, and we need to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And that is, it's finances, that's time, that's just how we do life in general. Our whole life.
The week of fatigue, suffering,
right?
The bad things that we endure.
Everything
it's all
has
of it.
to do with God reconciling the world to himself.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
When we look at health problems in this world, we need to look at it through this context and through this lens that the world is groaning. We are being purged of our sin, and the gospel is the only lens that we look through that makes sense of suffering. The only lens.
Right. That's
fellowship with the suffering that Jesus had. The gospel is the only lens to look through when it comes to racial inequality. It literally makes us all brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, all of us. It's the only thing to look at when it comes to fiscal responsibility. Are you amounting wealth for what? Like, we are missing this. And if we get this, if we capture this idea of reconciliation, and if we do it together, church, if we do it together, even, and generally speaking, you look at the numbers as far as like on the fiscal side of things, 10% do 90% of the lifting on this.
Very true.
And that's not the case for our church, I would say. I think it's probably 15. But it's probably a little bit different. But, the idea is if we were to all, it's not equal giving, but equal sacrifice. If we all were to peer into what we have. And for some of you, it is when you're in that older life stage, when you're saying, okay, I've acquired some things, how are you going to deploy that? Are you going to deploy it to where, and I'm preaching to myself here. I'm very young, I'm just getting started. I'm probably 10, 15 years into what I have now as far as what it's taken me to get to where I am. And I have goals of where I'm headed. And, I'm looking at all of that through the lens of what I'm able to accomplish as a pastor, as a son and daughter of the Most High King, what I'm raising and rearing my children to do, all of that. Like, and I even mentioned this on Sunday, from the perspective of, owning a business, to pastoring, like all roads lead back to this thing of how can I make the biggest gospel impact with my life. And, I had a lady stop me on Sunday and said, I'm looking, and I won't say who it is, and I'm going to meet with her and her family when we get back from Thanksgiving trip. But she said, I'm still looking for that thing that the Lord has for me. I know that there's something. And I said, well, I might have just the thing, and it was just something that I was thinking about in that moment. But some of you that are in your, you're up in years and you're thinking, and there's nothing that I can do. Well, no, there's absolutely things that you can do. And if you have done well financially and fiscally, if you involve yourself in those ways within our church and within the context of the gospel, I can't imagine the feeling that you would receive from that. I know the feeling that I received just being involved in the here and the now, but think about the fact that you've gotten yourself to this place, and when you realize that, oh my goodness, the Lord has been leading me all along, I've been able to do this with his power, and then when all of that comes together and we go, man, this could be used for something gospel-centered, Like the feeling, the joy that you get is the same type of feeling that Paul was urging this church to get. Don't miss out. Be a part. And that's the incredible thing, that we still have this outlet. We still have this avenue, and here we are 2,000 years later.
Yep. Still having this conversation.
Yeah. Fame and fortune. Are you really after what the world has to offer? Or are you looking for being famous in the kingdom of God? And that's really a terrible way of putting it, but it puts it in the context of what we're talking about.
It really does. And I had literally the same conversation with our teenagers on Sunday. Why do we continue to pursue things that the public eye knows bring emptiness and nothing? Like, why?
Yeah.
Why do we dedicate our lives chasing these rabbits?
Yeah.
When we don't need to.
Yeah, and I think just to give another, and we're just spitfiring.
We're just spitfiring as we do.
But I think this gives, it gives credence to this idea of being responsible, and specifically there's all this financial talk within the last little bit of this letter, and of course what Sunday's message was. That's why it really matters for us to be fiscally responsible.
Yeah.
If you are foolish, and that's why I'm not saying give everything that you have. Absolutely not. Prosperity gospel preachers will encourage you to give it all, right, to them. And I read that book, God, Greed, I think it was God, Greed, and the Prosperity Gospel. And these faith healers are going to countries telling the poorest of the poor to give all that they have for healing, and so that the Lord will make them rich. Mm-hmm. And none of them get rich. None of them get healing.
It's terrible.
It's horrific.
It's terrible.
But that's the type of behavior where a thief breaks through and steals and destroys. A thief will bring an end to what you have and what you have worked hard for. And that's what Satan does. Yeah. Satan devours. He consumes. Mm-hmm. Jesus gives you an outlet, shaken down, pressed together, running over. And the same language is used in 2 Corinthians chapter 9 here, where he talks about this idea of it's you deciding, you partnering to give, but it continues. It's a flow. It never ends. It's living water, right? So when we connect these thoughts, right? The same thing that Jesus was preaching, the same thing that Paul is trying to teach, is that if you are plugged into the source, if you are doing this thing in the right way, this financial thing, right? Let's just take that one part, that one piece. This is something that's going to continue. It's something that you're going to be able to do your entire life. It's not something that, I gave it all. No, that's not what he's looking for. He's looking for a partnership. He's looking for someone that says, I will steward, Lord. I will steward. And that's someone that has to know. That's someone that has to know what their budget is. That's someone who has to know what's in their checkbook, the balance of their checkbook. This is where it's not easy. It's folks that, and here's where you pull in the willingness and the hard work and the character into this thing. It's not if I do this, it's miraculous, right? There's a miraculous piece to it, but that's God's piece, where he continues to bless you and lead you and give you wisdom, right? There's so much of the miraculous that's involved with it, but our part is getting up, going to work. I'm blown away at times by the lack of work ethic and the lack of, especially among younger folks these days, where they want everything that their parents have, but they sleep till 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and it's just, or some even later, and they for sure don't work third shift. And that's where this part comes in of hard work and effort. And I think that in our congregation, you see a lot of the older that gets frustrated with the younger, because they don't have those things on lockdown, but they do. But yet the older are giving now begrudgingly. They're giving saying, if I didn't do this, then things wouldn't continue. Mm-hmm. And it's a holistic thing where we are together working. Some of you that have this on lockdown, you need to talk to some of the younger ones. You need to tell them. You need to have those hard conversations with your kids and with your grandkids about working hard. You need to not bail them out financially when they encounter struggle, when they encounter issues. And I'll just foot the bill. Well, I'll just do that. You're not training them to be gospel-centered.
Yeah.
You're training them to be dependent. 100%. And so we can see this this holistic thing that comes around, that money in general is a big revealer of where our heart is and also where our character is. If you are not disciplined in this area, and mind you, we could go 100 different directions with this, talking about debt, talking about laziness, work ethic, all of that. But the fix is for us to really focus on the gospel and understanding what is at stake. Paul specifically knew what was at stake for those, for those saints at Jerusalem, and this church really needs to get involved. But ultimately, as he sums up this letter, he says, "Look, it's going to hurt you, Church of Corinth, if you're not participating. It's going to hurt your spirituality."
Yeah.
And some of you, this is an easy way. Just look at your bank statement. Just go back 6 months. How much have you given? How much have you made an impact with the things of God, with your pocketbook, with your wallet? And if it's not what you think it should be, if it's not even the low watermark tithe that we talk about, then reevaluate. Let's get serious about this thing. And chances are, if that's not right, the other areas of your walk with the Lord are not right. And it's a great thermometer just for all of us to kind of look at and say, okay, what's the temperature? Where are we at?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, great series, great message, and honestly, this conversation is very fitting for just kind of a reset for Thanksgiving Day, because it all goes together. We're approaching a season of buy, hoard, trample people in the store. So keep these things in the back of your mind, because they're very important, and these are tools that we can use to allow ourselves to live a better gospel-centered life and spread the kingdom. I think even before we sign off too, it's like you bring up that point that we could be doing so much better this holiday season with our children, with our Advent readings, with explaining to them when we look at Jesus, and ultimately that's what Paul did. He says Jesus is our greatest example of this. Jesus is the greatest example of stewarding things really well. Yep. And that wasn't from the perspective of he had a ton. It's he had a ton and he gave it all up. Right. He is the epitome of this conversation. And so don't let this season pass, like Cody said, where we don't focus on that. And maybe that's something that we can do, just put out some tangible things next week during the conversation. That we could help our children with. And I think Operation Christmas Child, it's really good. That's been neat. So if you do have children in our kids program, they will be bugging you for money for the next 5 weeks, because we're raising money for one of our missionary families through what I call the Joy Fund. That's cool. And they're competing to see if the boys or the girls can raise more money. Oh, that's awesome. So we'll see who wins. It'll probably be the girls. Yeah, man. Always. Because they're hustlers. They really are. Got anything to do with it. Yeah. Well, she came up to me yesterday, and she was like, this is before service, and she saw the buckets. She was like, Joy Fund, what is that? And I was like, oh, we're going to be raising money for our missionary families. And she was like, oh, well, I have $39 at home that I've saved up. And exactly $39. She'll give it all too. That child is definitely geared that way. We have to teach her fiscal responsibility. She's like, Dad, I don't need it. I just gave all of it. I know. Yeah. And she's gonna be. It'll be at the end of the month. It'll be $39.05 versus $2. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. I know, right? I know. Well, we love you all so much. Thank you for hanging out with us, and I pray that the Lord will just impress on your heart. To lean in, to look at your life and in every aspect and see how can you be more gospel-centered. I know that the Lord was reconciling my behind to him every week in every category, and I hope that you seek the Lord in the same way. You're over here like, boy, he's painting my back porch red every week, I tell you. Tanning my behind. Well, we love you. We appreciate your viewership and listenership, and enjoy the rest of your Thanksgiving. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. God bless, do less. Bye now.